So who's taking part in these talks then, and what exactly is being proposed?
Well, Egypt has put forward this proposal to have a limited ceasefire of a couple of days in exchange for the release of some prisoners and also some hostages. So I think that this is a way of trying to establish some form of trust between Hamas and Israel. Both sides will do exactly what they're supposed to do as per this limited ceasefire agreement, and then there may be talks to a more permanent ceasefire at some point in the future.
So this is a ceasefire that would cover the conflict between Israel and Hamas?
Yes.
It wouldn't extend to Hezbollah in Lebanon?
Not at this stage, no. I think the main focus of Egypt, Qatar and the United States is to have some sort of ceasefire between Israel and Hamas.
Once there's a ceasefire there, though, that would make it easier then to extend it to the other front line? Potentially,
but I think what is driving a lot of Netanyahu government's position is the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu faces these criminal trials for corruption, and he's due to give evidence in December in his own defence. So if the hardliners in his government withdraw their support, if he's deemed to have signed a ceasefire too soon, then he would most likely lose the prime ministership, and then he would lose the institutional protection of that office against these criminal charges that he faces.
And then what would happen to Israel's response to what's happening?
Well, it would certainly create a degree of political instability, and there would be no ceasefire. I mean, there is no pressure on Israel really to get a ceasefire, a genuine ceasefire between either itself and Hamas and itself and Hezbollah. I don't think any genuine pressure will be applied, if anything, until after the US elections.
But if there were to be a ceasefire, it wouldn't just mean that hostilities would be paused. It would allow humanitarian aid to cross into Gaza.
Potentially, yeah. But I think that Israel would closely guard that and seek to find any signs that Hamas was receiving any form of aid or assistance or was re-establishing its control in Gaza.
Looking at the situation then between Israel and Iran, what do you make of the scale of Israel's action and Iran's response to that action that was taken over the weekend?
Well, I think that was an example that the US was placing a lot of diplomatic pressure on Israel to not do anything too dramatic and escalatory that would create panic, particularly targeting Iran's oil facilities that would have a flow-on effect, economic effect in the United States just before the election, not to mention the regional pressure on Israel and on the United States to pull Israel into line. So the fact that Israel targeted military sites and it was seen to be fairly proportionate speaks volumes, I think, to the amount of diplomatic pressure that was placed on Israel.
And Iran's response to Israel's action was to say that they don't want a wider war, but they reserve the right to retaliate. Is this a sign that both sides are working so that the situation doesn't escalate?
Well, I think Iran has never wanted, I don't think, a genuine conflict with Israel, because that would mean a conflict with the United States, which it would inevitably lose. So it has always been avoiding any form of direct conflict with Israel. Is retaliated when it has been attacked or its national interests have been attacked by Israel. So I think that this is a sign that Iran is saying, look, we don't want any war, but we are certainly prepared should war event become to us.
Finally, Martin, what's your reaction to the incident in central Israel where a truck driver drove his vehicle into people who were at a bus stop, killing one, injuring at least 30?
It's certainly the reports are that it was an incidence of terrorism, or they'd have to wait until the police investigation. But again, it's a sign of how much hostility there is towards Israel from Palestinians for the excesses of its attacks in Gaza and in the West Bank.